Today I'm going to do the recap from my first 50K and talk a little bit about my recovery. 8.24 miles, 8 minutes, 52 seconds per mile, 138 beats per minute, going for my first run after my 50K. The day after my first 50K, I took completely off. It was a rest day. I was feeling surprisingly good. And then the following day, so 2 days after the 50K, I went for my first run and I felt surprisingly fantastic. Now granted, the 50K was a solo effort. It wasn't a race. It was more just an attempt at the distance itself, not really training specifically for that distance, nor really being able to give it a race effort. So it wasn't like I had just raced my heart out. So I expected the recovery to go relatively quickly, but I'm still feeling amazingly good. After the race, I took in a whole bunch of water because I was so thirsty. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I was so incredibly thirsty. And then I wasn't hungry, which was strange for a really long time. Normally by the end of even like a regular morning run, like the morning run that you just saw the footage of, I'm pretty hungry, but I wasn't hungry for a long time. So I was a little bit concerned about that, but eventually the appetite resumed. I did get a lot of sleep. Fortunately, my wife was able to pick up a lot of the slack from me doing this run in the middle of a week. I took a little nap in the morning and a longer nap in the afternoon. And then I went to bed like super early. So I got probably 2 days worth of sleep at least. Within 1 day. So that I think helped out substantially. So some stats for the 50K run, 31.11 miles, a little bit over 50K. I wanted to make sure that I at least got the 50K on the day. 4 hours and 38 minutes total on feet, which is a lot longer than I thought I'd be out there. And before this run, my longest run in the past 2 months has been 13 miles. And that was like just a couple of days before the 50K attempt. And so I hadn't been doing a lot of high or long distance runs, although weeks have been relatively high mileage. But I was surprised at kind of how quickly I started to get really fatigued. Already by like mile 14, I was, pulling back on the intensity, thinking I got to conserve because there's so much run left. So I got to like really tone it down. And then by like mile 20 at the second lap, I think you guys saw some of that footage yesterday, me narrating it. I was already starting to feel not so great, and I was like hoping that the sunrise would make me feel good and kind of rejuvenate me. It did, but then I had another time where I talked to the camera, which I didn't put in yesterday's video, that I talked about like how I was just really struggling and just kind of jogging it in. I didn't care what my pace was at that time, as long as my feet just kept moving. All right, I'm at 24.4 miles. I'm feeling it. Whew. I'm just gonna jog it in. 5.6 miles, 6.6, 6.6, 6.7 miles to go. And by then I like lost any ability to do math and figure out like, well, I wanted to get 31.07. So 31.07 minus 24.4 is how many miles left? I couldn't figure that out. So I was just like, I don't know. I got to just run a whole bunch more, like a little bit more than 10K I figured. So I was like, all right, I'm struggling. Let's just try to hold it all together to reach the end. And I was able to do it. So I felt really good about that, felt very accomplished. And I felt like, this was like a giant like barrier to break through. So I felt like really good and felt really strong. So I'm very happy about it. But some of the review of like my nutrition plan, my hydration plan, and the gear. So that's the way I'll break it up. So for nutrition, I had brought 5 gels with me. I had 2 of the Unived Elite gels, which are kind of like tall boys, they're like doubles. A regular sized Unived gel, a Clift Shots, a Rocktane, and a Maurten. And the Maurten was kind of iffy because it had gotten all puffy, which made me think that there was some sort of like mold growing inside. But I had a couple of those, and I tested one, and they're all puffy. So I tested one, opened it up, smelled it, tasted it, and it seemed to taste fine. So I felt like it'd be okay. So I did that. Those were the 6 gels that I brought. I only ate 5 because I had one left over at the end. And the one thing that I definitely realized, it was a hotter day for this run, 75 degrees at the start and a decent amount of humidity. And under those conditions, I did not want to eat the goo Rocktane. I just like the thought of it. I was really thirsty, and the thought of like something like goopy and thick just was not appetizing at all. I was able to get the Clift Shots down, but it wasn't one that I particularly enjoyed. I liked all the thinner gels, the 2 Unived Elites, the Unived Regular, and then the Maurten. Those all went down great, and I wished I'd kind of had more of just the Unived Elites. In part because of the volume, because it was like having liquid, like it was like drinking something, but also like it just went down easier. And when I was really hot and just sweaty and tired, I just wanted that. The other thing that I wished for was more caffeine. I only about half of the gels, or maybe 3/4 of the gels that I had caffeine in them. Some of them didn't. And when I was doing this run in the middle of the night by myself, like I just had a real hard time focusing and getting into a rhythm. I found myself getting like distracted a lot. And so like I really think having some more caffeine would have helped kind of like just snap me into place. And I don't think I had enough. So that's something that I would do differently for the next time. In terms of hydration, I definitely didn't bring enough water for this type of run. I brought 32 ounces of liquid, and I had mixed in some of the Unived sports drink. I was thinking I'd be out there for a little bit more than 4 hours, so I was like 8 ounces an hour seems like a decent amount, because then it's like, you know, you're taking like a cup of Gatorade like that you might get on a race every half hour, which just seems about right to me. So I was thinking that'd be okay, but definitely it wasn't enough for me. I would have loved to have had like another at least 4 ounces, if not another 8 ounces. So I'm thinking this is really useful information for me to start kind of playing around with on my longer runs as I start thinking about my next marathon, is the hydration strategy. I've been focusing a lot on salt and sugar in terms of my hydration / nutrition plans. But I think I just, because I'm a heavy sweater, I might just need more liquid. So I'm thinking I might start tinkering with 10 ounces an hour, maybe even 12 ounces an hour when I'm running a little bit harder, to see how my body responds to that at that like 2 hour mark. Because that's about when I started thinking, well, my mouth's getting really dry. I'm starting to get nervous about it. And that like kind of sent me into not a spiral, but it started sending like a cascade of doubt. And for today, this run, for the 50K run, it wasn't like a big deal, because then I could just pull back on the intensity and try to enjoy the run more than race the run. But for a race, I definitely have been in that situation where I'm like, oh, I don't have that many gels left. I'm really thirsty. No matter how many cups of Gatorade I take in at this point, I can't replenish the thirst. So it's like, what's going on? I must be hitting the wall soon. So like it just, all those, it's like a cascade of negative thoughts. So I think to avoid that, I think if I can dial in the hydration a little bit more, which is something I've been definitely neglecting, I think that can certainly help. So that's something for sure that I'll be taking forward with me as I start think more about more marathons and of course other 50Ks, because I did have a really good time doing this. I can't wait to do it with someone else. I think the next time I do one, I'd really like to try and do one with someone else that we're going to stay pretty close to each other for at least a lot of it, if not the entire thing. The last 2 things I'll talk about are the 2 main pieces of gear that I thought were really important for today: my hydration pack and the shoes. So for the hydration pack, I brought the Camelback Zephyr, which is a really lightweight race vest that I've been using, and I put a 2-liter hydration bladder, water bladder in the back, and that's what I'd been using to carry the Unived sports drink. And it could fill 2 liters, so it easily held the 32. I could have brought twice as much liquid if I wanted to, but I wanted to stay light. So it's good to know that I have more capacity. I had no issues with it at all, except for like 2 things. Well, it's like one thing that caused 2 problems. One is like the hose is really long. It's too long for me. I don't know why it's so long. And so I couldn't figure out how to like snake it through the pack correctly, so that way it would still stay secure and not bounce around while I was running, but also be reachable enough so that I could drink it. So what I ended up doing is I ended up giving it a loop before I sent it through some of like the piping where it can go into the pack to secure it. And what ended up happening was, as soon as I tugged on it to drink from it, it tightened, it pulled on that loop that I had made and then twisted it. So it kinked it. So I couldn't drink out of the hydration pack at all. So I had to stop at like mile 6 or 7 to fix that. So that was a problem that I had. But then the second problem that I ran into because of that is that the Camelback Zephyr doesn't have any sort of like leash or way of like holding the tube from the hydration bladder. And maybe there is, and I just don't know because I'm a newbie. This was actually the first time I've run, maybe the second time that I've run with a hydration bladder. The first time being maybe like 3 years ago at this point. So it's been a while. And that pack had like a specific like clip that you could clip it into to hold it down. So I couldn't figure out what to do with the hose. I was tucking it into one of the drop pockets in the front. That didn't seem to work because it would either come out. I tried like looping it across body in another drop pocket, and that didn't feel right either because there was just so much tubing. Like the tube was in my face, and I was like, this isn't right. So what I ended up doing was looping it over my shoulder and tucking it in to my side, on the side of the pack, in between like my tank top, my singlet, and the pack itself. And it was kind of hanging like on my side, like under my armpit a little bit. And that was fine. No chafing, no rubbing. It stayed really secure there, and it was fine. And in fact, what was nice is the pack, because it's on your back, most of the liquid stays warm, but all the part that's in the tube gets like air cooled. So like that first sip was always really refreshing. And then after that, then you got to the stuff that had been stuck on your back and it got warm. So it was like nice body temperature. And then I would put it away and wait for like that part to get air cooled, and then I would drink some more. So it was an adventure. The last thing I'll talk about is the shoes. The shoes that I picked for the run were the Hoka Carbon X. And I think this was the right choice for me. The Carbon X was a shoe that for marathon races always seemed like underwhelming, not that exciting. It just didn't seem like a shoe that wanted to run that speed. So I thought, you know what? The shoe, when they launched it, they had Walmsley try to break, and I think he did break the 50K road record. So I'm not anywhere near trying to break any sort of 50K road record, but I am trying to run a 50K on the roads. So I thought, let's give it a shot. And I really liked it. I thought it helped me. I've always thought of it as a very smooth shoe. So I thought that even though it's not the softest foam of all the shoes that I have, I felt like it would do really good in terms of all those impacts hitting the road for the 50K. And it turned out to be right. I think that I started noticing like my feet were tired at 22 miles, but they weren't hurting at any point. And I felt like I was still able to keep moving really quick and pick my feet up and keep the gait cycle moving. So that's the recap from the 50K and the status on my recovery. I'm kind of like ready to get back into some more running. I'm not doing any workouts right now. So not something that I really need to worry about. So just in terms of getting out there and getting my daily runs in, I'm pretty much ready to bounce back. So feeling good. I'm very surprised about that. I'll tell you that. So that's all I have for today. If you have any questions about the 50K or the recovery, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'd love to keep talking to you about it down there. I hope you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I'll see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?